Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Veterans Memorial and Multicultural Histories Incorporated. And today is March the 9th, 2023, and it is Thursday. We are at Riviera Beach Preparatory Achievement Academy, and I have several of my students with me. I've got Attica, Ronisha, Savannah, Tanika, and Andre, who are that's my camera crew. And also, besides our subject, we also have a gentleman accompanying him, Artie Williams. Okay, and Dan, how you doing today?
Wonderfully.
Sir, what is your full name?
Daniel W. Calloway, 1938, 84 years of age and be 85 and all. The last of the Mohegans. But I want people to know that God has spared my life this morning. 3017 S Avenue. It was Acorn Boulevard.
Riviera
right
Beach.
in Riviera. All my life. My first 6 years I went to Washington Junior High on 31st Street.
Mm-hmm.
On 30th Street. In the back of it, it was on 30th Street, right where Greater Bethel is. Where the school was on 30th Street between, R and O. We didn't have enough sense to know we were poor because we ate 3 meals a day, and normally it's from catching fish, killing rabbits, chickens. We had a chicken pen, a hog pen, no running water. We only had no lights. We had to have kerosene lamps. So we had to change the wicks and wash the shades every 3 or 4 days. And I had 3 brothers and a sister. I thought I was in heaven. And the church was our recreation. We didn't have gyms. We had a baseball diamond. We're all great baseball players, and of course you can play football anywhere. We were great athletes, but we didn't know we were poor. We didn't have no idea about that because everybody had a garden, collard greens, cabbage, okra, tomatoes, and all that stuff. We got mango trees, orange trees, so we had a lot of food. We ate off the land. But one thing we had was closeness and brotherhood. The people in Riviera wasn't a large number, because we knew after 7 o'clock we couldn't be on the east side of the railroad track. That was forbidden. We can play with the whites in the daytime or work over there in the daytime, but after night we had to be on the west side of the track. And not that we were afraid, but we were cautious when the word got out and the Ku Klux Klan was coming in and burning the cross. We had to go hide because they didn't know what family they may burn out or maybe kill. So we had that kind of fear, but my 3 brothers and I, we were never afraid of anything. No, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, every year. You remember now, I was a boy when they burned out Rosewood. And there were different places, and in 57, Miss Harriet Moore was my 5th and 6th grade teacher, and I had gone down to Palm View, which is right now at UB Kinsey, and Mr. Moore was lynched and killed 2 days after Christmas. Harry Moore, his name was Harry. He was over the NAACP. He was the charter, the president of it. Yeah, he was about 57, 58. He was a brainy man, and he was trying to empower the blacks to not only stay in school, but to galvanize himself as a whole and work with that NAACP, and therefore numbers is power. And I would say that 85% of the blacks, they weren't educated, but they were people who would be good in battles if you gave them the right direction. Well, battles then is with the pride that you're not going to be a subservient and taking a back seat. And a lot of people all over the country were, it was secret to stand tall in the gap, because it wasn't about being afraid and not doing anything then, but what about the future? if back there, if somebody hadn't stood up, then Rosa would not sit in that bus for that Martin Luther King would be able to stand and march. And then finally, Obama ran and was on the president. It take saving time. Everything is like building a house. You start with a foundation. And back there then, you know, there were so many people who knew something about the plight of black people. And a lot of them lost their life because of that. And of course, Riviera probably improved probably more than anything, because when you go back into the record book, Riviera is in the history book of so many things. They were the first. Like the first black city manager, first black police chief, black recreation director. You got so many things. The great Herman McCrae, the Boone Dardens, the Alfred Newbows, and on and on. It's just a lot of them. And because somebody paid a price, and they simply said, enough is enough.
Are you reliving any trauma, events, domestic violence, drive-by shootings?
Someone, when I walked in there, and the lady said they read my book. I wrote a book a few years ago. It was in the top paper, which I wanted the people in Riviera, the people in Palm Beach County, and I don't care, all over the world, to know that when I said holes in the top paper, we didn't have shingles on the roof then. It was top paper. And if you understand that the heat with the sun and the rain, the nail's gonna rust, and so that means where it's rusting in the paper, it's gonna get wider and wider, so that means it's gonna form a leak. It's gonna be holes in our life. We're gonna have leaky roofs, holes in the floor. We got to understand how to repair that and not complain about it and go do better, because now we know better. Of course, I witnessed some violence. I witnessed not a lynching, but that we were told by, that was a man we called Mr. Johnny. And the police officer, there were no black police officers in Riviera until 1949. David Field was the first. But before he came, it was all white police officers. And therefore we were segregated. Monroe Heights, if you know where Monroe Heights is, that's where only the whites could live in that area. The black people lived around that. So they put up a wall. They didn't want us to look over there. They thought the black young men or the men was gonna look across the wall, across the fence, and see white women putting their clothes up, and sometimes they're in their gown. That was a no-no. If we'd have been caught looking over that wall, like a man at the baseball park in West Palm Beach in the late 30s, the police officer shot him in the head and killed him. So we understood from the churches, from the schools and home, certain things. It was in like the Garden of Eden. Jesus told Adam and Eve what fruit to eat. We know what fruit we could eat and what we couldn't. What I mean by the fruit, what was evil and what was fair. And that just made us tougher. Tougher, because every household, the door was never locked. If any of the boys and girls was hungry, they can walk right in there. Everybody got food on the stove, cooking it on the top of the stove, and come on and sit and have something to eat. They share. We don't share today, but we shared then. Now, when I was drafted to play baseball by the Pittsburgh Pirates right out of school in 1956, when I finished at Roosevelt, all my career, from first grade to 12th grade, I never went to a school where it was integrated. It was always black. And I don't make no bones about it. I think that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because all my teachers was like surrogate parents, where my mother and father had to work, and sometimes my father had 2 jobs because there was 5 of us in the house as kids. And I had a father and a mother for the first 51 years of my life. I buried both of those. And that was a monumental thing when back there you had a father in the house. A lot of the people in our community didn't have fathers. Fathers had babies and they left, whatever happened. But we were taught to respect not only our teachers, but our teachers and our preachers. The preacher or the minister was the number one thing that everybody open up, allowed, no cursing, no fussing, no fighting. Whatever the pastor, the minister would say, it's like it was coming from God's mouth. But we don't have that. Now, whether the community is degraded and got away from that, or whether the ministers are not doing what they need to be doing when I was coming up. I think that when you were allowed to go to a movie, it was an all-black movie. Everything was all black, all schools, all churches, and all the entertainment. They write a story about the Great Sunset down there on 9th Street now, between 9th and 8th Street, off of Henrietta and Division. That's where all the great performers, and that's where we went. We had the nightclub of the Cotton Club, the Snoops, bar. That was our entertainment. And then at each church, the Christmas parties, the New Year, the Easter, and in summer, vacation school. But one thing we had is what the Africans said. It takes a village to rear a child. And that's what happened in Palm Beach County, in Riviera. And to this day, the youth recreation, which was born 60 years ago, we still go all over the county with everybody, but predominant in Belle Glade, South Bay, and Pahokee, where they do not have the amenities that we have on the East Coast, and give back. Because our motto is simply the least, the lost, and the left out. We cannot forget those people, because what Jesus was doing, and you got to remember this, if you don't have the Lord in your life, you're going to be lost anyhow. But what he was doing is going to and fro, up and down, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, giving hope to the hopeless, giving sight to the blind, and raising the dead. Now, the last two things man can't do. He can't give no sight to no blind, and he definitely can't raise nobody from the dead. But the metaphor is that it can be done with an all-powerful God. But right now, it's no excuse. Because if you're good enough and got the funds, you can go to any school, you can get into business, you can have your own property, and that's why I've owned my home ever since I was 29 years of age. I never left my mother and daddy's house before I was able to build my house. And now I live in a gated community, not because it's better than everywhere else, but I want to have the protection while I sleep. And that's what they do now. But I wouldn't change my upbringing, my tutoring from the first grade to the 12th grade, because it was all black teachers. For the first 6 years at Washington Washington Junior High School. Now it's Washington Elementary School, but it's not where it is. It was on 30th Street. And finished school at Roosevelt after 4 years and 2 years at, right now it's UB Kinsey. It was Palm View, formerly Industrial High. I love that. I have two living teachers. Mrs. Hutnell just passed a year ago, but Mr. S. Bruce McDonald, he is 95 years of age, and we get on the phone and still have a conversation. And I'm blessed because there are it's about 5 older people in Riviera that was born. Now, a lot of people may be older than me in Riviera, but they weren't born in Riviera. I'm saying who were born there. The Davis, you got on your staff, Percy, well, I can't think of her last name, but she was a Davis, Willie Davis, and his twin sister, Willie Mae Davis. Her grandson is now Troderick McCoy. He's a councilman in Riviera. Those people who ascended and become owners not only their own home, but other property like the nightclub, the restaurant, like Herman McRae, and now he's passed, and now Derek McRae got the barbecue. It used to be between 27th and 28th Street on Old Dixie, which is Obama Way, but now it's on 45th Street in West Palm. Those things is heroic. And history, we talk about a lot of these things in February. You can never let your history be taken away from you. And what we are doing now, we are hiring teachers. We got a curriculum being put together by Steve White, where we're going to have black teachers teaching black history, because the governor said he doesn't want black history taught in the school. We're not going to jeopardize the teachers or the superintendent, but we're going to do it ourselves, because all we need is a parent signature and not have it on the school property. We could not bring it here. We cannot go to one of the high schools or middle schools. We're going to go to the Calloway gym or something like that, or the library. We can do that. We are responsible to teach the history. And one of the things I want you to remember, if you can go and get the movie Roots. When Roots came out, most of you all in this maybe wasn't even in elementary school. You need to see that movie, because the movie Roots depict the main character was Kunta Kinte. He was an African on the Belonga River, and he was kidnapped by the white slave, brought over here against his will. And all the time he was here, he was trying to run. Not that he knew where he knew where he wanted to go, but how to get there, he didn't know that. But when he married and he had a daughter named Kizzy, and he taught Kizzy about the people from the African village. And when she had her son, she had a son named Chicken George. And when Chicken George got up, he had 4 kids, 4 boys. He taught them about the old African, about the Belonga River. See, you have to be proud of your upbringing, where you from. Where you from doesn't diminish you as a great person or a normal person. It doesn't. You have to have the opportunity to do your best and let God do the rest. As simple as that. See, we live on black history because it's the foundation to make us keep striving for what we lost in my generation, and the next generation got to be better, and that generation after that got to be better, and you got to do better for your generation coming up, for your generation, because you're building for the future. See, we can never give up hope. There was a man who was the coach of the, and this is a metaphor, of the Houston Oilers. They had a running back named Earl Campbell, and the coach name was Bum Phillips. He simply said, if we hold the rope, everybody on the team get on the rope and put hands together. If ever that rope break, nobody will fall, because your hands are locked together, and you got to send a message. Where we're failing is, we see something, we won't say nothing. We allow the bad people, which is only 8 to 9%, you allow them to kill, shoot, rape, and do everything bad. And the other 90 to 91% of the people who are good stand by, and we get blamed for it. You can't do that. You got to stand in the gap. Enough is enough. The young people got to really be tough and have the mindset. If you see something, tell your grandmother. They're looking out behind the curtain and see people robbing, stealing. 99% of all the problems that we have right now is in the predominant black area, is black on black crime, and that is the worst. When I read and I look at TV and I see what happened in Memphis, Tennessee, that one man was killed by 5 black people. We got to stop putting it on white people always doing it. No, we are doing more to ourselves right now than any white ever done, because I spent 25 years as a sergeant detective in the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I traveled all over the world speaking. about drugs. I was charged to go to the Medical Foundation. You need to read about that, in Topeka, Kansas. They had 10,000 people there for me to tell them what's happening in South Florida. Florida is a peninsula. Water on the west side, water on the south side, and water on the east side. They said, how can you control the drugs? You can't control it. Florida is a flat state. So under the radar, the plane fly up under it. So the people can get in here with the drug, drop it on the beach and pick it up, and then they have the foot soldiers go and give it sell it. And who's making the money from it? It's not the foot soldiers, the layman. It's always somebody who got planes and boats. And that's black people that don't have no planes and boats. So you can put that puzzle together. Somebody's benefiting on the back of our race all the time. And if we are dumb enough to fall into that trap, it's a shame. This day and time, our only hope is the kids who are in school right now. Because my generation is putting their guard. And the generation behind me is dying out quickly. You are the future of tomorrow. And you gotta be repetitious. Everything that you do in sports, and it's Coach Cartwright. What he does is he gotta say it over and over. In the classroom, you gotta say it over and over. The reason why you have to be repetitive is that it's like dribbling a basketball. You wasn't born to dribble a basketball or catch a football or hit a baseball. You gotta practice, 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 and the more you read and the more you learn, the more you'll do it easily, because the best thing you do is eat. When you eat your food, you never have to worry about it. You know how to bring your finger with the spoon or the fork right to your mouth. You don't look at it. And you can be looking at the TV and eating all the time, because you do it every day. The more you do something, the better you're going to do it consistently. Yeah. That is what you need. If you don't take anything that I said, but don't allow society to put you in a box because of the color of your skin. Just say some of the military, when you go to a war, the Korean War, the Bay of Pigs. I was in the war in Germany, in the Berlin crisis. John F. Kennedy drafted 60,000 of them in 1961, and I was one of those. Stress will bust a drum, what they say. Of course, you're going to have some scars, but it's really how strong the individual. Actually, my race problem made me stronger, because I want to prove to everybody, my counterpart, that I was just as good or better. I never back down. But some people go in a shell and they get into the middle thing. And then they pass it on to the generation because they didn't learn that there's a big God somewhere. Everything that I say is not as important as this. If you believe in the power of God, that if he bring you to it, he'll get you through it. So lean on that, because you are as good as any individual ever walked this earth, because you're all of God's children.
How do you feel about the future of Florida state education?
I think it's the worst thing in the world, because it's right now controlled by a tyrant. That's the governor. Anytime that a man says he think he needs to take the black history teaching out of the schools, and because he brought up an incident that happened to Big George Floyd, and everybody knew the situation out in the Midwest, and he said that they got slangs that Black Lives Matter. He's upset because they're talking about putting on the shirts and Black Lives Matter. Of course Black Lives Matter. And then the other thing about that, I stand up every year with my Jewish counterparts and be right there with the Holocaust, because I think it's one of the worst things that I've ever seen. So therefore, don't let anybody tell you you shouldn't learn about your history. If you don't know your history, whatever the leaky holes or the rough past, you're going to fall right in the same thing, because you don't know that past.
How do you feel about the effects of the economy?
The economy is like a basketball. It bounces up and down. When the eggs that you eat in the morning or whenever the milk. When the pandemic came, a lot of things had to be shut down. And then the truck drivers, nobody to haul this, that, and for. So whoever, when the government started giving money to the farmers, the union here or there, the money got to be paid by something. So therefore, the man who is the landlord of the apartments, he started raising the price. They raised the grocery price, but nobody raising the salary of the workers, the employees. So until they balance everything, first of all, you got to pay people really enough money to keep up with the cost of living. And see, that's where the problem is. And what we have to do is go and be smart enough to go to the polls when it's local, when it's statewide, national, and pick the best person who said, we're going to go back and make sure the teachers are paid more money, the police officers paid more money, or the first responders, and then come in and say, well, those people who have fallen on hard times, we will allocate money without it being a disaster, like a hurricane, like what happened over in Fort Myers. Now, of course, FEMA going to help out with that, but it's always a hurricane. It's always something happen. You need to have better people who represent you, and not when they get in there, they forget about you. No, you don't have enough, because mental illness and mental health is two different things. One you were born with and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And then one you can cure it. Our problem is we don't have enough people to teach, and then that's some of my problem, because we're going to do something about that, because we're going to have a big health fair. The AKA sorority has already contacted me to get something in Riviera and bring it to the Calloway complex next year, where we have all these booths set up to teach you about mental health and all other kind of health problems. So what they are going to do, you need to have that taught, not so much on the campus, but the parents and the kids need to go to these different other places away from the classroom and to learn that, because John Q. Public need to be able to recognize, you see somebody on the corner and you all say, well, he's crazy. Well, if he's crazy, acting funny, when do you go and tell somebody that you saw this? See something, say something. No, we're not where we should be, because you never know when a crazy person go get a gun, go right in the church and start shooting everybody, or go down there like they did in Fort Lauderdale at the school. That's a crazy person. And what happened up in Orlando not too long ago, and everywhere else, we knew something. Somebody said they've been acting a little funny, but you didn't say anything about it. And I think that needs to be broadcast over and over repeatedly in the schools, in the homes, in the church, and out there. Because the lawman is only going to be so many people. And so we all are part of the answer.
Okay.
That's why you go to school, is to learn about life. I mean, if you're just going to go with the math, the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic, and the English and everything like that. But life, teach life. What is like current events? You need to have that current event and discuss. And the main thing about it, and please don't go and tell people that an old man said this is what caused all the problems. But if we don't stop teenage pregnancy, babies having babies, we always going to be behind the back of the 8 ball, because you are not mature enough to have a baby in this society 13, 14, and 15 or 16. You're not. So therefore, we got to preach that.